I wasn't satisfied with the quality of my life being captured in these restrictive habits, and exercise was a key player that kept that cycle going. And this is why, for me, it was really important to make sure that these desires behind exercise were kept in check, and for me to be really honest behind the reasons to why I wanted to exercise. So I really recommend you think about these 3 things that I personally use to keep my exercise in check as a part of my life whilst still being committed to recovery. Hey guys, welcome to the 11th bonus episode of our first series on eating disorders. In the YouTube community space, I invited you guys to share some questions about my eating disorder as well as my recovery journey from that. And today I'm here to answer one of your questions, which is around managing exercise whilst you are committing to recovery. But before we get into that detail, I'm always here to remind you that I am not a medical professional. So if you need to seek medical help, please make sure you get that support in your local area. But without further ado, let's get straight into talking about how to manage exercise when you are still committed to recovery. Now, I think we need to start by saying that this is not easy at all. So if you're finding this really difficult and challenging, I think this might have been one of the most difficult challenges for me to crack, at least in terms of taking the longest time for me to try and understand. And of course, I don't know whether I still have the full picture or not, because I feel like the thing about mental health is when you feel like you know a lot, the next stage in your development journey, you always reflect and find something new and discover and learn new things as you go along, which might be the case. But today I'm here to share what I have reflected on so far. The first thing I want to talk about is that whether exercise is good or bad, for me right now, really depends on the context. Exercise is indeed a really tricky one because it's often recommended as a strategy to keep healthier in your mind and in your body. So you might be thinking, Min, I exercise every day and therefore I am healthy in my mind and body. But personally, I think that this is where context comes into play, and it's crucial. I think that well-being is absolutely all about context. And what I mean by context, it's essentially how you really are feeling deep down when you're undertaking these activities. Because, for example, my health context around exercise, obsession, wanting to drop my weight, be slimmer, and the desire to feed into my fear of weight gain by promoting weight loss did make daily exercising kind of toxic for me. When daily exercise can actually be completely fine for some people. Do you see the difference? Because my context around weight loss and this obsession to sacrifice a lot of things about my well-being to maintain this weight loss, exercise every day was toxic for me. I hope you start to get a picture of what I mean by this context. I tell myself to always rethink what advice I'm getting from health professional as well as online, because it's always about how does this advice and wisdom fit into my context, fit into my situation, how I feel. This is where I really want to empower you and say you are the only person who can answer this question. So this is a food for thought. Always think about what exercise mean in your current context. And so you might be wondering, okay, Min, how do I actually find out about this context and see whether exercise is currently good or less good for me right now? I'm going to give you the most annoying, but the only true answer, I think. Only you know, deep down. Well, I knew deep down why I was trying to go for a run so badly. Is it really because of your cardio health? Or is it really because you kind of feel like you need to go out and burn some calories. Which one is it? Only you know the answer, deep down. Even if we all know it's really, really hard to listen to these glimpses of truth. And I'm speaking from my experience, because if you're like me, you'll often find yourself making justifications to mask these voices or realizations of what's really motivating you to exercise. For example, if I have a glimpse of self-realization that I'm trying to exercise to burn some calories, I'll quickly mask that thought with another justification saying, no, exercise is good for me. I want to go for a run because I want to get some sun. It's not about calories. When deep down I am running for calories. Do you see how there is a close interplay between my subconsciousness, or more like my deep down desires, as kind of in tension with myself trying to talk me into why it's fine to do that exercise. Now, the thing is, I want to highlight here that this is totally normal, in my opinion, because human beings often have multiple emotional, logical reasons behind why we do certain behavior and why we make certain decisions. For example, in one occasion where you're trying to exercise, you might have about 50% cause of the motivation to stay healthy and because you love yourself. But at the same time, it's possible to have another 50% of that motivation coming from your desire to prevent weight gain and or lose weight. This is natural, right? I'm not saying this is bad, but what I am saying is that I think if you've been involved in restrictive eating like me for a long time, I have personally found that exercise has been a key player in keeping my negative cycles going and going and going. Because for me, even if I exercise with the 50% motivation to prevent weight gain, it only is a matter of time until I start spiraling further to then put more pressure on myself to exercise more, wanting to feel a bit slimmer, and then ultimately engaging in further restrictive eating habits that facilitate my restrictive eating behaviors, which ultimately, like I said before, made me unhappy about my life. I wasn't satisfied with the quality of my life being captured in these restrictive habits, and exercise was a key player that kept that cycle going. And this is why, for me, it was really important to make sure that these desires behind exercise were kept in check, and for me to be really honest behind the reasons to why I wanted to exercise. So I'm going to share a few tips now. How do you test yourself, whether you're trying to go for a run because of calories, weight loss, or because you care for yourself and you love yourself? One test I use that's quite effective is assessing how I feel when something important pops up and actually I'm not able to go for that exercise anymore. How do I feel? It often reveals a great deal of fear that doesn't quite make sense. And this, to me, indicates that I am exercising to prevent weight gain. It's feeding into my fear of weight gain. I would ask myself, okay, why am I feeling scared and anxious and annoyed about the fact that I can't go for my exercise today? Usually the answer is deep down, I am worried about not being able to exercise today, and I am worried that it will affect my calories, my weight, and my body shape. So when I detect myself doing exercise, feeding into my restrictive habits, then I will do a mix of the three things that I'm going to share with you right now. And I do a mix of these three things because we're all human beings. It's not like we're coded to act in only one way every time something happens. So I do a mix of these three things in general. The first thing is I will just go do that exercise anyway. Like I said, we're not a robot. We're not a code. We're human beings. So sometimes it just happens. It's okay. But second thing that I do as well, time to time, is actually swapping out my exercise into something that I believe is not as efficient in burning calories. So I'll swap out a intense interval running session with a mindful slow yoga session, or I'll just go for a short stroll. I'm almost taming my own exercise plans and ideation to just make sure that I'm not creating an ongoing cycle of using exercise to burn calories and lose weight. Right, so that's the second thing. And finally, when I am doing high calorie burning exercises like interval training or long distance running, especially because, as some of you may know, I've been training for a half marathon. I've actually completed the half marathon. So when I was doing these high calorie burn exercises, I ate more. And this is how I personally think I managed to train for the full half marathon without using that opportunity to lose weight. Actually, in fact, I have not lost a single drop, I think, which is great. When I was training for 10K runs, for example, I would be taking energy gels every 20 to 25 minutes, which has carbohydrates and calories in. If you don't know what energy gels are, I actually caught myself when I was running originally that actually, I kind of don't want to take these gels because what if, it's preventing me from losing a bit of weight from this training journey? This is when you have to make a bold decision for yourself, because in our community, we have promised to never give up on recovery, right? So I then make a decision to do the opposite thing of what my, disordered eating habits tell me to do. And I do the opposite thing. And I take gels consistently. I took them sometimes even if I didn't necessarily need them for training purposes, because I had to make sure that my body gets energy. I also found it quite amazing how in the initial 4 to 6 weeks of training, during my half marathon training, I was absolutely ravenous. I was eating quite a lot more than my normal portions, which might be because my body had never run that much before. And I was okay with that. I was happy with giving myself more food because I was doing higher calorie burn exercises. And by doing so, I felt like I was constantly kind of killing my old disordered eating habits earlier before they can gain much power. It's almost like draining my disordered eating habits from even having any hope to resurface and gain more control of my life, because I do not want that to happen. Just to give you one more example before we move on is, when I sometimes go for a long run and think, maybe I would lose a little bit of weight from this session because I did a bit more than my usual distance, I'll go and have an ice cream or 2 sandwiches for lunch instead of 1. And then my sort of disordered eating part goes, crap, never mind then. There's no hope. Not going to lose weight. Okay, never mind then. I'm killing that desire earlier on when it's manageable. Whereas I feel like from experience, the more I feed in and act to these desires to lose weight again, not eat properly, it becomes harder to stop because I get even more scared about gaining weight. So I manage in chunks, in earlier chunks. And I see this as almost a good strategy to intervene with yourself earlier in these cycles to prevent relapse and to prevent your recovery from being halted. So I really recommend you think about these 3 things that I personally use to keep my exercise in check as a part of my life whilst still being committed to recovery. I personally think it's important not to just avoid exercise altogether, because we might be running away from our anxieties if we do that. We might try to run away from the problems, but actually, I think the way to grow and improve and recover even stronger is to learn gently with yourself how to face these fears and develop your own strategies and toolbox, like I mentioned in our previous episodes about staying resilient, and always try a mix of these things and see which one you get on with really well. And just to add a little bit more to this, because it's been something that I've learned quite a lot from my therapy recently. If I ran away from, for example, running altogether, if I ran away from running altogether, to protect my recovery because I'm scared that exercise is going to intervene with my recovery, rather than facing sort of the problem and thinking creatively and proactively with myself about how I could make this better, I would not have raised money for mental health charity, which I did for the half marathon. I would not have been able to sit here sharing this valuable insight and reflection with you guys, and I would not have completed my life's first ever half marathon, dedicated to paying attention to my body, self-love, and raising awareness in mental health. So I think we need to stay strong, to keep problem solve, think creatively, love yourselves, share support with each other's in this channel and other communities that you're involved in. And I believe that we can continue to achieve amazing things by facing these fears and addressing strategies together. And I believe that the reward for facing such fear and doing hard work is incredible. Now, let me know if you enjoyed this conversation, and if you did, I'm going to give you a cheeky ask to leave us a 5-star review. It would certainly make me very happy, but also it would really help our team to create helpful content for you and others in the community. I just want to say thank you for spending time with me today and for sharing your question around exercise and being committed to recovery. Please leave any extra questions in the comment section below if you want to hear more, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Until then, please stay healthy, stay well, and I love you guys so much. Take care.